Story 1. Spoilers, of course. Either The Land Before Time, when Littlefoot's mother dies, or Bridge to Terabithia, when he says it's my fault. Story 2. John Coffey's death and the guards' reactions in the Green Mile. Story 3. The end of Coco always makes me ugly cry. My toddler was obsessed, so I have watched it 100 times. Story 4. In Inside Out, there is a moment when she says, "I just want to go home." There is also the scene when joy accepts sadness and all the joyful core memories turn sad. Story 5. The end scene of Homeward Bound gets me every goddamn time, from the second Jamie starts calling for Chance. Story 6. The funeral scene in Steel Magnolias, Sally Field's performance, and the time Lassie fell down the hill traumatized me as a 5-year-old. Story 7. In The Sixth Sense, when the man realizes that his wife killed his daughter and says, "You kept her sick," it always makes me bawl. Story 8. That scene in The Neverending Story with Artax in the Swamp of Sadness. Story 9. The scene in Waste Allocation Load Lifter, Earth Class, when he forgets Eve. Every time this little robot who taught us to love and care for others looks at her with a blank stare, my heart breaks. He is not human and does not speak. But there is so much silence and loss in his blank stare that I reach for tissues long before the finale. Story 10. It's Not Your Fault. When Robin Williams repeats this to Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting. Story 11. The scene in Interstellar in which Cooper watches the videos of his children makes me cry every time. Story 12. At the end of Dead Poets Society, when the boys stand on their desks as Robin Williams leaves the classroom, they show their support for him even though it will cost them everything. That scene is even more moving now that Robin Williams is gone. Story 13. I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king. Story 14. In The Patriot, when his little girl, who had stopped talking, finally runs to him, hugs him, and begs him not to leave. Story 15. In Coco, when Miguel sings "Remember Me" to Mama Coco at the end, there is no holding those back. Story 16. When Mufasa dies in The Lion King, I lose it every time. Story 17. We are assembled here today to pay our final respects to our honored dead. Yet in the midst of our sorrow, this death occurs in the shadow of new life, the sunrise of a new world, a world our beloved comrade gave his life to protect and nourish. He did not regard this sacrifice as vain or empty, and we will not question his profound wisdom at these proceedings. Of my friend, I can only say this: of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human. Cannot even read it. I am not a Star Trek fan at all. Story 18. The Color Purple. When Nettie comes home, fabric billowing above the field. Story 19. This pin. 2 people. This gold. I could have saved 2 more people. Schindler's List. I am literally tearing up. The powerful imagery of saving Jewish lives with a simple brooch is so heavy. Story 20. In Home Alone, the old, scary neighbor greets his son and granddaughter who are coming to visit him for Christmas. I don't know why, but it gets me every time. Story 21. The Fox and the Hound, when the lady leaves Todd in the game reserve. Story 22. Finding Dory. As a mom, when the parents show up with the shells they're still retrieving for her, I lose it. Story 23. That heart-to-heart between Julia Roberts and Susan Sarandon in Stepmom. Every damn time. Story 24. The last 15 minutes of The Color Purple. There are never enough tissues. Story 25. It is dumb, but Click with Adam Sandler made me cry when he fast-forwarded through his life and realized that the mundane, day-to-day moments were the ones he should have held on to and savored. It was incredibly sad. Story 26. He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy. That scene always gets me. Story 27. Please, boss, do not put that thing over my face. Do not put me in the dark. I am afraid of the dark. It was a line I could not forget as a child. I cried for a while because of it. Most people mention scenes that made them cry during the scene, but this one scarred me so much that I cried afterward. Story 28. I never had any friends like the ones I had when I was 12. Does anyone? Cue up Stand By Me and I am crying all the way through the credits. That movie hits differently when you are the writer's age. Story 29. Hatchie, A Dog's Tale. My wife asked, "Why are you sobbing in the kitchen?" I'm the one who is supposed to cry over this kind of stuff. Story 30. Shelby's Funeral in Steel Magnolias. Laughter through tears. Story 31. At the end of the movie and the band played on, there is a montage of notable people who died of human immunodeficiency virus and acquired immune deficiency syndrome, set to an Elton John song. At one point, the film shows a crayon drawing by a child. On the drawing, the child wrote, "I have acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Will you hug me? I am crying as I type this." Story 32. Saving Private Ryan. A chaplain and an officer arrive at the Ryan home to deliver the news, and she wordlessly falls in a heap on the front porch, knowing what is coming. The final scene when Elder Ryan turns to his wife and asks whether he has been a good man and earned it. Story 33. An old couple embraces in bed, about to die on the Titanic. If I turn on the TV and unexpectedly see that scene, I still cry instantly. Story 34. Dead Poets Society, He's All Right. Story 35. The end of Coco with the grandmother and the music was really embarrassing for me in the theater. Story 36. In the movie Titanic, the mother with her babies is in bed as the water rises and says it will all be over soon. I cannot. I am a mother, and no. Story 37. Toy Story. When they all stop trying to get out of the furnace and hold hands, it chokes me up thinking about it. Story 38. Marley and Me. I can handle people dying, but a dog? Forget about it. Story 39. The Great Dictator, The Final Speech. To anyone who has not seen it, it is extremely relevant right now. Story 40. Homeward Bound. When Shadow gets stuck in the pit and the others have to leave him behind. Story 41. In Arrival, when it reaches the pivotal moment and you realize what has been going on. Story 42. When Oskar Schindler laments that he could have saved one more life, even though he saved more than 1,000. After Maximus killed Commodus, he is on his way to meet his wife and son. Story 43. The scene in Dumbo when his mother rocks him. Just thinking about it makes me cry. Story 44. The ending of Field of Dreams, when John and his father play catch, and when Moonlight Graham steps off the field. Story 45. Inside Out. Not the Bing Bong scene that makes everyone cry, but the scene where the last of Riley's childhood world crumbles and she decides to run away. I watched that movie in the theater with my wife and daughters, who were both preteens at the time and were going through much of the same stuff Riley was. It hit me so hard. Story 46. A Dog's Purpose. Any upsetting scene and I'm done. Maybe it's just me, but when a human character dies it takes a lot for me to be emotional, like Joel from The Last of Us. A dog or other innocent animal, though, and I'm crying almost immediately. Story 47. I have no idea why, but I immediately start ugly crying and sobbing if I hear or see even 5 seconds of the Rainbow Connection. It is bizarre and completely baffling because I have no negative memories or feelings associated with the song. It is beautiful and I love the Muppets. My husband did not believe my instant reaction until I showed him, and he is as bewildered as I am. Story 48. Klaus. Various moments. The girl getting her sled, Jesper's narration at the end, including the moment right before it fades to credits. That movie hits me in very specific parts of my heart. Story 49. Brian's Song. I was a little kid the first time I watched it. Story 50. Bruce pushed Ben Affleck out of the way in Armageddon. Come on. Story 51. Two of them come to mind. 1. Fly, you fools. The music, Frodo's reaction, and the subsequent scene of everyone falling apart kill me every time. 2. He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy. I'm sorry I didn't do any of it right, but I'm damn sure lucky you're my boy. Yondu's final act was comforting his son. A devastating scene. Story 52. Terms of Endearment. Mom is in the hospital with her adult daughter who is dying of cancer. It is not yet time for the next dose of pain medication, so the nurses try to delay it. Mom loses her composure. I cry every time and am tearing up now. Story 53. In the movie A Star is Born, Jackson commits suicide in his garage, and the dog is there, looking confused and scared, not knowing what is happening. I don't know why, but I ugly cried in the theater. My sister apologized for traumatizing me, and I said, "No, you didn't traumatize me. If a scene makes me cry this much, it means the actors did a really good job." I haven't watched the movie again since. I now have a corgi, and I can't imagine leaving her like that. It breaks my heart. Story 54, Muriel's Wedding. Almost any scene with her mother in it, especially near the end. Story 55, Coco Remember Me Recuerdame. We went to a showing with live musical accompaniment. I had seen the movie before and knew it was coming, but I kept telling myself to stay composed. We were sitting close to the stage near the guitars, and I started thinking about my grandfather, his old guitar, and his Mexican songs. When they reached the part with Remember Me, I lost it and sobbed heavily. Story 56. I hate to even bring it up because it still feels too soon, but that last bit of my girl fucks me up a lot. Story 57. All We Have Is Brokeback Mountain. In the scene from Bridges of Madison County, she looks like she wants to get out of the car. Story 58. Forrest Gump spoiler. When Jenny dies in Forrest Gump, I don't care what anybody thinks of her. He finally married her and had an adorable little boy, and then she was gone. After decades of friendship and love, he buries her under their tree. I cry every time I watch it, even when I try not to. It was the most moving ending to a movie I've ever seen, to this day. Story 59. Ash turned to stone. Pikachu tried to revive him with lightning bolts, and all the Pokemon cried. Story 60. I ugly cried the first time I watched Grave of the Fireflies, at the scene when Setsuko dies. Story 61. Emma Thompson in Love Actually. When she discovers her husband is cheating, she goes to her bedroom to cry so her children do not see her. The way she is hurting while showing such strength for her children is heartbreaking. It is an ugly cry moment every time. Story 62. $1 Million Baby hospital bed scene with Hilary Swank and abusive family members arguing over her money. Story 63. In The Fox and the Hound, when the old woman drops Todd off at the game preserve and drives off in tears, I still can't make it through that scene without choking up. The song alone destroys me. Story 64. In the movie Stepmom, Jackie, played by Susan Sarandon, says goodbye to her children and gives them their Christmas gifts. Later, when Jackie and Isabel, played by Julia Roberts, begin to become friendly, Jackie says, "I can have their past, and you can have their future." Story 65. When Shadow limps over that little rise and says, "Oh, Peter, I worried about you. I'm 56 and it still gets me." Story 66. I sobbed like a child at the end of Marley and Me when they put down Marley. Story 67. Big Fish. I just cannot do that movie without breaking down. Story 68. When the extraterrestrial asks Elliot to go with him and Elliot asks him to stay, I sob. It also reminds me of the book 4th Grade Rats, when the boy realizes his father cried at the end of the movie. Sometimes men cry. Story 69. Marley and Me. You were the best dog ever. You loved us. Turner and Hooch. We just have to get you home. Hang on, Chief. Both movies make my husband and me sob. Story 70. Tangled. The sadness on the faces of the king and queen when she is still not found. Apollo 13. When Jim Lovell's son asks if they have fixed the door. Story 71. In the movie The Road, when Vigo's character dies, his son weeps for him. Story 72. The Good Dinosaur reunites with his family at the end. Story 73. The defense's closing statement in A Time to Kill. Back in the day, I saw Old Yeller when I was 11 or 12 years old and was practically hysterical. Story 74. The daughter's unveiling in What Dreams May Come. The whole movie gets me, but the first time I saw that scene I sobbed like a snot-nosed toddler. Story 75. Andy is playing with his toys one last time as he gives them to Bonnie. It makes me so nostalgic for childhood. The emotions are overwhelming. Story 76. I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king. But how am I going to know you are okay? You got me off the island, Luca. I am okay. I am a leaf on the wind. Story 77. In The Family Stone, Diane Keaton's character looks at a black and white photo of herself as a young, pregnant woman. She then looks up at Rachel McAdams' character and says, "That's you and me, kid." Story 78. Terms of endearment. Basically the entire movie, but especially when Emma's sons visited her in the hospital. Story 79. That scene in terms of endearment when Emma says goodbye to her boys. Story 80. Two films come to mind. Atonement. Around halfway through the film when Robbie has to go to war. Everything that follows is heartbreaking. The last scene of the wind that shakes the barley is also very moving. I get choked up even thinking about it. Story 81. This is my family. I found it all on my own. It is small and broken but still good. Story 82. This is the only movie that makes me cry. I cry when Meryl Streep's character does not take Billy from Dustin Hoffman at the end of Kramer versus Kramer. After a lot of therapy, I can admit I have been projecting and I hope she at least got joint custody. Story 83. Terms of endearment when she starts going downhill in the hospital. Story 84. Not a movie, unfortunately, but the ending of Season 1, Episode 3 of The Last of Us. I was not ready for that. Gut-wrenching, primal sobbing. I haven't cried like that since I lost my dog. Tragic beauty. Story 85. Fried green tomatoes. When Ruth is dying and asks Iggy to tell the story about a lake. Story 86. When Moana's grandmother comes back as the glowing stingray. Story 87. When the nanny has to leave and the child starts crying for her to stay in the help. Story 88. Hello, San Dimas. Please welcome, for the final report of the afternoon, from throughout history some of the greatest people who have ever lived on their 1988 world tour. Story 89. Probably the boy in the striped pajamas. I didn't ugly cry, but it definitely made me very sad. Story 90. Sorry, I can't provide or transcribe the monologue from that link. I can, however, give a concise summary or create an original, cleaned-up paraphrase suitable for Azure text-to-speech. Which would you like, and how long should it be? Story 91. Spoiler alert. Todd is left behind in The Fox and the Hound. Story 92. Salt Lake City Punk. When Stevie-O sees that Bob has died, he starts crying and asks who is going to be his friend now. Story 93. I will never let go, Jack. I am not a romantic person. I am single. I do not believe in love. I hate romantic movies. I pretty much only watch horror films. But Titanic gets to me every time. Story 94. In Steel Magnolias, the scene where Sally Field loses it at her daughter Julia Roberts' funeral always makes me cry. Story 95. Mr. Holland's opus, pretty much the whole movie. Just when I start to dry up, he inspires someone else and I am in pieces again. Story 96. I have been scrolling and have not seen anyone mention Titanic. The most heartbreaking moments are when the band continues playing, the old couple lying in bed with water rushing underneath, and the mother tucking her children in. I showed my 10-year-old at the end of summer, and we have watched it at least 15 times. We just watched it again 2 days ago, and I burst out crying during that scene. It gets me every time, and now that I am a mother it is even worse to imagine. Story 97. Spider-Man. No Way Home. The scene when Peter talks to Mary Jane in the coffee shop, hoping she will remember him, but he realizes it is not going to work. Story 98. In the year of our Lord 1314, patriots of Scotland, starving and outnumbered, charged the fields of Bannockburn. They fought like warrior poets and Scotsmen, and won their freedom. Story 99. I watched the entire movie Fly Away Home. I cried from start to finish and ended up deeply dehydrated. Story 100. When Philly, Keely, and Thorin die, I cry every time I watch it. Story 101. Marcel the Shell with shoes on. The peaceful, easy-feeling scene. I absolutely wept. Story 102. The ending of 7 Pounds, when the girlfriend visits the man to whom Will Smith donated his eyes, gets me every time. Story 103. The last 5 minutes of Terms of Endearment. Not a single line of written dialogue and none was needed. I bawled my eyes out. Story 104. The first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan broke me. It was harrowing and real. Story 105. The ending of Everything Everywhere All at Once, when they are trying to rescue the daughter from the bagel. Story 106. I never thought I'd cry at an Adam Sandler film, but I could barely leave the theater after Click. Story 107. The car scene in The Sixth Sense. Do I make her proud? DX. Story 108. When Babe the pig asks for his mom at the factory farm in the beginning of Babe. Story 109. Dead Presidents. A lot of that movie sums up my childhood. I joined the United States Marine Corps at a young age. We deployed to Iraq, and when I came back I felt lost and struggled to adjust. Story 110. Big Fish. Edit. Not just the ending but also the bathtub scene. Story 111. When Coco sings to his great-grandmother, she begins to remember her past. Story 112. When the lady drops Todd off in the woods in The Fox and the Hound. Story 113. At the moment, even a movie like Dumb and Dumber could make me ugly cry, laughing out loud. The scene in 10 Things I Hate About You when Kat reads her poem. Story 114. The Land Before Time. When Littlefoot's mother dies, it gets me every time. Story 115. Beth's death in the 1994 film version of Little Women is completely heartbreaking. Story 116. The gingerbread man in Shrek had his feet ripped off. Fuck Farquaad. Story 117. Forrest Gump. You died on a Saturday morning. I had you placed here under our tree and had your father's house bulldozed to the ground. Mama always said dying was a part of life. I sure wish it wasn't. Little Forrest is doing just fine. He's about to start school again soon. I make his breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. I make sure he combs his hair and brushes his teeth every day. I'm teaching him how to play ping pong. He's really good. We fish a lot. Every night we read a book. He's so smart, Jenny. You would be so proud of him. I am. He wrote a letter and says I can't read it. I'm not supposed to, so I'll just leave it here for you. Jenny, I don't know if Mama was right or if it's Lieutenant Dan. I don't know if we each have a destiny or if we're all just floating around as if by accident on a breeze. But I think maybe it's both. Maybe both are happening at the same time. I miss you, Jenny. If there's anything you need, I won't be far away. I'm tearing up just reading it. Story 118, You Stay. I go. No following. Iron Giant, for those curious about the movie name. Story 119. At the beginning of the film Up, when his wife becomes ill without dialogue. The scene in terms of endearment where Deborah Winger dies in front of her mother Shirley MacLaine. Any death scene. Story 120. How Did He Find Me, Novelly? Lexi and Her Poor Babies. Story 121. In the Iron Claw when Kevin gives the I used to be a brother speech. Story 122. A toast to my big brother, George, the richest man in town. Story 123. The Vow. Channing Tatum says goodbye to the love of his life who lost her memory. Story 124. I had never really cried at a movie until I saw Up. The opening sequence, to be exact. Story 125. Hachiko. A Dog's Tale. Kate visiting him at the station, recognizing and accepting his determination, never fails to make me cry. It is less about the movie than the actual historic story, but seeing it presented like that is a well-decorated gut punch. I believe this kind of love relationship cannot be properly explained and must be experienced to be understood. I was one of those people who never wanted a dog or cat and ended up adoring my unasked for companions beyond reason. I like to think that Hachiko himself might have felt similarly about Professor Ueno. Story 126. When Deborah Winger gives Shirley MacLaine that tiny wave right before she dies in terms of endearment, I dissolve into tears. Story 127. In Homeward Bound, when Shadow comes walking over the hill limping, just after the boy says he was too old, I am choking up just writing this. Story 128. It's Bridge to Terabithia. The part 1 I'm talking about is just pure onion gas, straight into the eyes. Story 129. The ending of Con Air, when Cameron Poe finally sees his wife and daughter and the song How Do I Live Without You is playing, gets me every time. Story 130. Cinema Paradiso is the montage of clips Alfredo cut together. Story 131. Aurora Greenway demands that the nurses give Emma her medicine. Katie tells Hubble that his girl is lovely. Laura sees Yuri again at the library. Story 132. The song Baby Mine from the movie Dumbo. When my son was a newborn, my partner would come home from his night shift and I would be on the couch nursing and crying while watching Dumbo. Story 133. Where are his glasses? He can't see without them. From my girl. Story 134. The scene from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in which Rocket loses all the friends he had as a child. Story 135. Good Will Hunting's "It's Not Your Fault" moment destroys me every time. Story 136. Well, my husband and I just saw The Conjuring, Last Rites. Spoiler. They experienced 3 miscarriages, and Ed and Lorraine's daughter was stillborn, then came back to life. I was sobbing in the theater. That, or Grave of the Fireflies. I was absolutely wrecked. Story 137. The ending of Big Fish gets me every time and makes me call my dad. Story 138. Friday Night Lights. The last game. The heartbreak. Tears and sobs every time. Story 139. The Neil scene in Dead Poets. If you have seen it, you know which scene. Story 140. The Shawshank Redemption follows the life of a certain character on the outside. Story 141. The moment Harry Bailey walks into the room at the end of It's a Wonderful Life and says, "A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town," I fall apart. My late son used to wait each holiday season just to see this phenomenon. Instant tears. Every single time. Runner-up. At the end of The Goodbye Girl, when Paula realizes Elliot will return because he purposely left his favorite possession, his guitar, there, and the theme song starts playing. All your life you've waited for love to come your way. I am blubbering right along with Marcia Mason. Story 142. The King's Speech. Won't you be my neighbor? The scene in True Grit with the wicked flea playing in the background. Schindler's List from start to finish, collapsing completely at the end. Story 143. I know it is not a movie, but the finale of The Good Place is an ugly cry every time. Story 144. The Pixar film Up. Watching Ellie be unable to have children, seeing her dream of travel repeatedly disrupted, and then watching her die, leaving Fredrickson alone. She was his everything. After that loss, during a new adventure, Fredrickson discovers that Ellie believed their whole life together had been the adventure. Story 145. The scene in Born Free when Elsa is reunited with the humans who raised her. The scene in Babe when the farmer says, "That'll do, pig. I have a soft spot for animals." Story 146. The color purple when Celie sees her sister and her children. Story 147. I always cry during A League of Their Own. Evelyn's son at the museum, Betty getting the letter, and the final Madonna song. Story 148. And Hathaway singing I Dreamed a Dream. I can't even type this without my eyes getting wet. Some things just hit too close to home. Story 149. From Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3, you know the line, I don't want to type it. Story 150. I don't think any movie has made me cry, but Old Yeller certainly left an impression. Story 151. Nobody believed me, but I knew you would come. How? Because my dad promised me. Story 152. Remember the Titans. After Gary has an accident and Julius arrives at the hospital to see him, the scene gets me almost every time. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.